Welcome back to another election night. Seeing as it's now 2022, I figured we'd start off with the Senate election night. These take hours for me to make, but it only takes you a second to like. If you enjoyed today's video, please do show your support. It would mean a lot to me. So with that being said, we're going to get right into it. Welcome to an election night in America. America's Choice 2022. It is now 7 o'clock p.m. on the East Coast, and we've got our first poll closings and some interesting Senate races to watch, including the highly coveted Senate race in the state of Georgia between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker. First, we're going to show you the races to watch. As I mentioned, Georgia is closing at this hour, but we've also got some other races. 4 of these 6 races that we have identified as competitive are held by Democrats, and then the other 2 seats are controlled by Republicans. So Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, New Hampshire are all seats that we expect to be semi-competitive, or at least somewhat close tonight. And then Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are the Republican seats that we expect to be pretty close tonight as well. In Vermont, we can project Peter Welch has won his seat. Remember, Patrick Leahy retired, and Welch, who was the congressman for the state, is now going to be their next U.S. senator. He has defeated Republican Sullivan. Now, in the state of Indiana, Todd Young with 2% of the vote, and we can project he will win this race. Right now he's ahead by about 23%. That lead might narrow a little bit, but the results we're getting seem to suggest he's headed for a very strong win tonight and an improvement over his 2016 win over Evan Bayh. Now, in the state of Kentucky, we can also project here that Rand Paul has defeated Charles Booker. Booker raised a lot of money, but that doesn't really look like it's going to go anywhere because, as you can see here, Paul is ahead, and we only expect his lead to grow from here. In South Carolina, Tim Scott with 7% of the precincts reporting. We can project he will defeat Crystal Matthews. Right now it's pretty close, but it's only because the more Democratic-leaning areas are in, and the fact that Scott's even leading at this hour shows he's headed for a big victory. He's likely going to do better than Donald Trump and Lindsey Graham in 2020, so Tim Scott headed for a very big win tonight in South Carolina. It's currently too early to call who will win Georgia right now. Currently, Herschel Walker does have a lead, but again, only 1% of the voters in is only from more Republican areas, so we're going to have to keep you posted on that. This race is going to be a squeaker, it's going to be a nail-biter, we're going to have to see who wins later tonight. So the current Senate makeup, we've got one state too close to call, that's obviously Georgia, and we've called 3 races for Republicans and 1 for the Democrats, so right now, the Democrats at this hour have clinched 37 Senate seats, and the Republicans have 33. It's now 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast. We've got some more calls to make. First, in North Carolina, we can show you that Sherry Beasley has a lead over Ted Budd, but again, it is too close to call. It's too close. It's too early to make a projection on this race, yeah, we'll have to keep you posted on this race. In Ohio, it's also too early to call there. Again, Tim Ryan has a lead. It's pretty narrow though, and we're gonna have to, we're expecting Josh Mandel to overtake that lead. We're gonna have to see later tonight. So again, we don't have any projections at this hour, but we can add Ohio and North Carolina to the list of states that are currently too early or too close to call. It's now 8 o'clock p.m. on the East Coast, and we've got some major projections to make. So in the state of Connecticut, we can project Richard Blumenthal will win this race. He's going to defeat Robert Hyde pretty early on, pretty decisive victory for Richard Blumenthal. And in Illinois, Tammy Duckworth, we can project is going to end up defeating Bill Brady. Not too surprising here, but Duckworth is doing surprisingly well in downstate. We expected her, most analysts expected her to do a little worse in southern Illinois because of, a rural shift towards Republicans, but, Duckworth's performance is a pretty good sign for Democrats that tonight might not be as bad as they expect, but again, it's early, we don't have all the precincts in the southern part of the state reporting, but Duckworth is overperforming as of right now. In Maryland, Chris Van Hollen with 1% of the vote, and we can project he will defeat Kim Klacik easily. Klacik, again, similar to Charles Booker, she raised a lot of money, but the polling never really reflected any semblance of a chance of a victory in these states, and she's going to lose by a pretty substantial amount at this hour. In Alabama, we can project Mo Brooks will defeat the Democratic nominee Dean, and in Missouri, Eric Greitens, he had there was a lot of controversy regarding his candidacy. He narrowly beat out Mark McCloskey in the primary, and he's running against Quentin Lucas, who is the mayor of St. Louis, but he still is going to win this race. Again, there was a bit of a third-party presence here because there were some conservative voters who didn't really want Quentin Lucas in the Senate, but at the same time did not really like Eric Greitens, so he's going to win by about 10. He's going to run behind Trump by a little bit, but it's still going to be a Republican win nevertheless. In Oklahoma, James Lankford, no surprise here, defeating Joe Dorman. And in Florida, it's currently too close to call a winner there. Val Demings right now has a narrow lead over Marco Rubio, but we're not sure if that lead's going to hold, so we'll have to keep you posted on this race. In New Hampshire, Dawn Bolduc is currently trailing Maggie Hassan. Again, way too early to make a projection there, with only 14% of the vote reporting. In Pennsylvania, Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, currently leading John Fetterman. Again, it's too close to call, though, and we do not have a projection from this race just yet. So, at this hour, balance of partisan is 40 seats for the Democratic Party, 36 for the Republicans, with races in New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, Ohio, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. Too close or too early to call. 8:30 p.m. on the East Coast, the polls in Arkansas just closed, but first we're going to show you a projection we are ready to make. With 78% of the vote in, a lot of votes were just counted in the past few minutes. Josh Mandel, we can project, has defeated Tim Ryan in this race. Again, right now it's fairly close. We do expect Mandel's lead to only grow, though, which is why we're calling it for him about an hour after poll closing. Tim Ryan had some pretty solid polling for him. You know, there was a poll that came out last week that had him within a point of Mandel, and, you know, there was hope for him from the Democratic side, but it doesn't really look like he's going to win right now, and we can project Josh Mandel has defeated Tim Ryan. In Arkansas, we can project John Boozman has defeated Jack Foster in this race. No surprise here, but right now he's currently leading in all but 2 counties, which will be interesting to see if that holds up. 40 for the Democratic Party at this hour, 38 for the GOP. The first really competitive race we've called is Ohio, and it's going to be in the GOP's favor. So, of all the, you know, competitive to close races that we've called tonight, you can give 1 to the GOP so far, 0 for the Democrats. Now, 9 o'clock p.m. on the East Coast, we've got a major projection to make, though. It's in Florida. We can project with 81% of vote reporting. Marco Rubio has defeated Val Demings in this race. Right now, he's ahead by a little under 5%, but we expect that lead to only grow, and he looks like he's headed for another victory similar to 2016, where he won by about 8 or 9%. And Marco Rubio, he was always favored. There was a little bit of hope on the Democratic side of the aisle for Val Demings. You know, there were some polls that had her within reach of this race, but at the end of the day, it does look like it is going to go for Marco Rubio by a pretty substantial amount in the state of Florida, so we can project Rubio has defeated Val Demings. In New York, the Senate Majority Leader has been re-elected, Chuck Schumer. 1% of the vote, and we can call this race for Chuck Schumer. He defeated Wendy Long for the 2nd time in a row. He beat her in 2016, and he's going to beat her again in 2022. In Kansas, Jerry Moran, we can project, has won this race, and in the state of Louisiana, no surprise here, John Neely Kennedy currently leading his Democratic challenger. In North Dakota, John Hoeven, as you can see here, currently leading, no surprise out of any of these states. And in South Dakota, John Thune. We apologize for the error again. I'll have to talk to my graphics team. They're really messing up tonight. He's currently leading in this race. In Arizona, currently too early to call, or too close to call rather, between incumbent Democrat Mark Kelly and challenger Blake Masters. This race has been, you know, the most expensive race in the history of Arizona, shattering records held prior, and it'll be really interesting to see who wins this race. Right now, Mark Kelly's got a lead, but we don't really know how it's going to end up. You know, if he can hold that lead, obviously he'll win. If not, we'll have to see what happens. In Colorado, it's currently too early to call. Michael Bennet currently leading his Republican challenger, Ron Hanks, with 10% of the vote, and we're not ready to call this race yet. Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes and Ron Johnson. Again, this race has been, you know, really talked about as a potential sleeper flip for Democrats. It hasn't really been on the radar for too many Democrats, but Mandela Barnes did say earlier this week that he expects to beat Ron Johnson. Tonight, we'll see how that goes. We only got 4% of the vote, so we don't really know where that's headed just yet. So, the GOP has now overtaken the Democratic Party in terms of the Senate at this hour. They've got 43 seats clinched, the Democrats have 41. And right now, the betting markets have gone towards the Republican Party. Entering tonight, they had about a 65% chance of taking the Senate at this hour, so up to 80%, because they have overperformed in a few races, and they've held on to Ohio and Florida by substantial amounts, which is really fueling the energy that's suggesting a Republican takeover tonight. It's now 10 o'clock p.m. on the East Coast, and we can project in the state of Colorado. Michael Bennet has won. Again, we don't really... this race was not expected to be super close, but Ron Hanks had an early lead, so we weren't ready to call. With 68% of the vote, and we can project Bennet has won. He's leading by about 7%. That lead's probably going to stay somewhere around that, so we're ready to call it for Michael Bennet. In the state of New Hampshire, this is another projection. This is a state that, was pretty competitive. This is the first of our 6 competitive states that we're calling, so this is good news for Democrats. There was some polling in New Hampshire that did suggest this race could be pretty close. The final CNN poll had Hassan up by 3 on Election Day. Earlier this morning came out, but with about 3/4 of the vote, and we can't project that she's going to beat Dawn Bolduc. North Carolina, however, this is massive news for Republicans. This was the state that they, really needed to hold, because if they lost North Carolina, it would have been really bad for them. But with 85% of the vote in, we can project Ted Budd has defeated Sherry Beasley again. Looking pretty close right now, but Budd's lead's only going to grow with the rest of the votes coming from more conservative rural areas, so it's going to be really, really tight. It's going to be semi-tight, but it's not going to be down to the wire like it was in 2020 between Cal Cunningham and Tom Tillis. But again, he's going to probably run ahead of Tillis, and that's why we're calling for him at this hour. In Iowa, Chuck Grassley can project 2% of the vote and has defeated Abby Finkenauer. Finkenauer raised a lot of money, but the polling really never reflected giving her a chance of victory, and right now she's losing pretty badly to Grassley. In Utah, Mike Lee, we can project, has defeated Evan McMullen. This race was pretty interesting because the Democratic candidate dropped out in July, endorsed McMullen, and McMullen really consolidated that support, and he actually did get some Republicans on his side, so it looks like he's gonna crack about 40% of the vote here, but Mike Lee still held on to most of the Republican base in the state. He's going to end up winning this race comfortably. In the state of Nevada, we can report that Kathleen Cortez Masto is currently trailing Adam Laxalt with about a third of the vote in. It's close. She's been closing the gap. She was down behind pretty. She was down pretty early, but she's coming back. But Laxalt still is a lead, so we're gonna have to see how that ends up going. Right now, 30% of the vote and too close to call in Nevada. So the GOP have 46 seats in the Senate right now, and they've got a pretty clear path to taking those extra 5 seats. They're favored massively in Alaska and Idaho, and if they can hold on to Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and then pick off one of the 3 Democratic seats that are in yellow, they will have a majority in the U.S. Senate. But again, still too early to call a winner in the Senate. It's now 11 p.m. on the East Coast, and we've got some major projections to make. So, in the state of Pennsylvania, we can project, we just talked about this, Mehmet Oz has held the seat for the GOP with 94% of the vote, and he is going to beat John Fetterman. At this hour, he's ahead by about 1.8%. It does not look like the gap's going to close, so Fetterman is about to concede the race to Mehmet Oz. In California, we can project Al Capadilla, no surprise here, is going to win this race easily. In Hawaii, Brian Schatz re-elected the Democrat. Hawaii's going to send another Democrat to the Senate. Oregon, Ron Wyden defeating Jo Ray Perkins, who went viral for her QAnon conspiracy theories that she was supporting, and Wyden's going to beat her pretty badly. In Washington, we can project Patty Murray has defeated Tiffany Smiley. Smiley is going to crack about 40% here, which is, fairly impressive for a Republican in Washington because it's a pretty blue state, but it's not really going to mean much because Murray's still going to win this race comfortably. In the state of Idaho, Mike Crapo, we can project here 3% of the vote in. He will win. And no surprise in Idaho. In Wisconsin, we were not going to call this, but we just got some reports from our decision desk team that Mandela Barnes is underperforming a little bit in some of these regions. So with about 90% of the vote in, ignore the part that says 3, it's 90%, just pretend it says 90%. But we can project Ron Johnson has defeated Mandela Barnes. The reason we're ready to call it at this hour is because Barnes, there are still some votes left in Milwaukee, but it looks like Barnes isn't going to get the margins he needs out of those votes to win, so we can project Ron Johnson has won this race. So the GOP, they have held their 2 competitive seats. That's 49 seats for the GOP, 47 for the Democrats at this hour. It's now 1 o'clock a.m. on the East Coast, and it's currently too early to call a winner in Alaska. Alaska's another race where there's an independent, so in Alaska, surprisingly, Lisa Murkowski did actually win that primary. Kelly Tshibaka, though, she did announce that she'd run as an independent to try to unseat Murkowski. And the Democrat, Al Gross, actually dropped out of the race because he did not get a ton of fundraising or, good polling. So it's really kind of a matchup between Tshibaka and Murkowski. Ranked choice voting could come to play here, but at this hour, it's really, too close to call a winner in Alaska. In Georgia, however, we can project 98% of the vote in. Herschel Walker has won this race. This is the victory the GOP needed to get the U.S. Senate. They needed to pick off one of those 4 Democratic states we said were competitive. They didn't win New Hampshire. It's currently too early to call or too close to call in Arizona and Nevada, but in Georgia, the polls have been closed there for nearly 7 hours now, and we can now finally project Herschel Walker has defeated Raphael Warnock in this race. He's, leading very narrowly. It's going to be close, but his lead is big enough for us to project a winner here. Now, at this hour, 50 Republicans in the Senate, 47 Democrats, and the Republicans are definitely favored in Alaska, and they might pick off one of the 2 between Arizona and Nevada. We'll have to see. It's now 2:18 a.m. on the East Coast, we've got a CNN key race alert. In Alaska, we can project Lisa Murkowski with 57% of the vote and has defeated Kelly Tshibaka. Again, there was some write-ins. There were, some people who did actually write in Al Gross in this race, but we can, we're ready to project Lisa Murkowski will win this race. No surprise here. She has defeated Kelly Tshibaka in the state Republicans. So as a result of that, the Republicans will control the U.S. Senate come 2023. This is a flip. This midterm was, widely considered by many to be an opportunity for the Republicans to take control of Congress, and it looks like they did that. So at the start, they got 51 Senate seats compared to the Democratic Party's 47. Nevada and Arizona are still too close to call at this hour. We'll wait to see whether the Republicans have a bigger majority, whether it's just a very narrow majority. It's now 5:17 a.m. on the East Coast. We've got a major projection to make. In Nevada, we can project the Democrats will hold the seat. Kathleen Cortez Masto, with 96% of the vote, has been re-elected. She is narrowly leading Adam Laxalt in this race, and it looks like she's going to hold that lead as the final votes from Clark County are counted, which Clark County is the most Democratic county in the state, so this lead might expand a little bit, might stay the same, but no matter what, Kathleen Cortez Masto in a very good spot to win this race as of right now. In Arizona, however, we've got the final call tonight is good for Republicans. Blake Masters has defeated Mark Kelly. This is, pretty surprising. Kelly was favored by most people, but it looks like Blake Masters is going to end up winning this race over Mark Kelly. So with that being said, it's all said and done here. 2022, the election night is pretty much over. In the Senate, we've got 48 seats for Democrats. They were able to hold on to New Hampshire and Nevada, but they could not hold on to Arizona and Georgia. The Republicans picked off those seats. They also held on to key states like North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. So thank you so much for watching. Again, I really hope you enjoyed this election night. Be sure to like and subscribe to ensure that you don't miss the next election night that I upload. Again, this is pretty ambitious, but I'm going to try to upload election nights once a month because it's election year now. So, might as well. I'll probably make a governor election night or, a best case scenario election night for a certain party. Just comment down what you want me to do. And I'm more than happy to make it because I've got the template now, because I actually deleted the CNN template on my computer and I had to remake it, and it's rusty if I'm being honest, but now I've got the template so I can make more election nights. But yeah, again, thank you so much. If you enjoyed this election night, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment down below what you think is going to happen. Thank you. I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.